Another trilogy was just completed in the MCU. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris and welcome back to another MCU video. So today I am ranking all of the trilogies in the MCU. Now for the record, Thor and The Avengers are not trilogies. They both have 4 movies. I'm specifically talking about franchises within the MCU that only have 3 movies. And before I get into this thing, be sure to hit that like button, comment down below your favorite MCU trilogy. I'm very interested to see what the responses are for this one. And be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, as I'm so close to hitting my goal of 75,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. Without further ado, let's rank these MCU trilogies. So coming in last place for me is the Ant-Man trilogy. Now this is a trilogy of films that I actually really enjoy. There's not like a bad trilogy in the MCU in my eyes. The clear weak link in this trilogy is Ant-Man and the Wasp, the middle film. Now a lot of people take issue with this film because it is more of a lighthearted, goofy movie as opposed to the seriousness of Infinity War and Endgame, but to me it always served as a nice little gap in between. Obviously the post-credit scene of this film is everyone getting dusted away while Scott is stuck in the quantum realm, so that's an interesting little way to kind of have a cliffhanger to lead into Endgame, but the whole movie's not focused on filling in the gap. It's its own little contained story where Ghost is the villain, and she's fairly mediocre, to be honest. I really wish that they made her more villainous because she was more just like an anti-hero, and everyone is just chasing after this one object the whole movie, so it never really had any high stakes. It's a very low stakes, fun adventure, but it is the most forgettable of the bunch. Quantumania would be my second favorite of this trilogy, which is, again, the most overhated MCU movie, I would say. Like, I've seen a lot of people say this is the outright worst MCU movie, which I strongly disagree with. I think there's a lot to love here. You've got this whole quantum realm to explore. It's a nice cosmic vibe. The family story is at the core of the film, with Scott and Cassie rekindling their relationship over the movie, but also Kang the Conqueror is the villain of this movie. He was terrifyingly good, and I'm really interested to see more of him in future projects, notably Avengers: The Kang Dynasty. The best movie in this trilogy has to be the original Ant-Man. I've said this before, but it is easily one of the biggest risks that the MCU has taken, and it fully paid off because it gave us Scott Lang, who is such a lovable character. Paul Rudd can do no wrong in my eyes. He's probably one of my favorite living characters in the MCU, actually, but it's got some great heist sequences. The character of Luis is an absolute scene stealer, and this movie is just such a delight that I can't help but have a smile on my face as I watch it. One of these trilogies had a place at the bottom, and this just so happens to be the one. However, I still really enjoy Ant-Man and Quantumania, with Ant-Man and the Wasp being an alright movie. Next up, we've got the Iron Man trilogy. Now, of course, the first Iron Man movie is a top 5 MCU movie for me, and always will be. I hold that so near and dear to my heart, but it carries most of the weight for this trilogy because Iron Man 2, as much nostalgia as I have for it, is not a great movie. It's got a lot of issues trying to set up way too much, but it does give us Black Widow. It gives us one of the coolest suit-up scenes in the MCU, and Rhodey gets to be War Machine in this film with his dope suit. So there's a lot to appreciate in this movie, but at the same time, it's way too bloated and never really has a clear sense of direction. There's like 10 main plot lines. It can get pretty hectic at times. And Iron Man 3, while I know a lot of people really dig that movie, I've never enjoyed it. I remember the first time I saw it in theaters, opening day with my buddies. My friend's mom picked us up from school. I think we were in like 7th or 8th grade, and we were driven right to the theater. The only seats they had left were on the front row, so we had to sit front row. I was so excited, and then the movie just ended up disappointing the hell out of me. Couldn't stand what they did with the Mandarin reveal, because at the time I was so pumped from the marketing to see Ben Kingsley play the Mandarin. They made that into a whole joke. I'm a little more forgiving of that now with Shang-Chi, but at the time I was so upset by it. And then they gave us this generic as hell villain, Aldrich Killian. It didn't do it for me. I was also pretty butthurt that like they went the route of Tony not really having his technology and suits, and I know that's like the whole main idea of the movie, but I've never really cared for that. I would prefer to have seen like a straight up Iron Man movie, because we only really got one straight up Iron Man movie, the first one. The second one, he's got a lot going on. He's got Black Widow in the picture, he's got his health issues, Rhodey is now War Machine. And the third one, he never even really has his suits until the end of the movie, and they're all automated. They're not even him in the suit, really. So it was a little frustrating, and this movie just lacks the charm to me of the first 2 Iron Mans. Now, Tony Stark is my guy, he's my favorite MCU hero and character, but I never really go back and rewatch this one. It's unfortunate. Overall, the trilogy is a roller coaster that starts out fast with one of the best movies in the MCU, then it takes a big drop off with 2 and 3, so the first one carries a lot of the weight. If Iron Man 1 was not good, this would definitely be at the bottom of my ranking. I think those are clearly the bottom 2 trilogies. Your order can switch depending on who you are, but the top 3, I feel like there's a lot of variability. Like, you talk to anybody, any of these 3 trilogies could be their number 1. My number 3 right now is the Captain America trilogy. Back in February, I think I said this was my favorite trilogy. I thought back on it, it's definitely not. The first Avengers Avenger is a fine origin story. I overrated the movie a bit a few months ago for some reason. I was like, oh, I think it's a perfect origin. It's far from that. It follows a lot of these generic beats. The best part about it is that it takes place during the World War II period. It does a great job of fleshing out Bucky and Cap's relationship prior to Bucky turning into the Winter Soldier. We get introduced to Peggy and Cap's whole romantic storyline, which is very sweet. And there are some triumphant moments here with the score that send chills down my spine. But Red Skull is one of the most run-of-the-mill villains we've ever seen in the MCU, so I can't put this too high in terms of my overall MCU ranking. Then we got the Winter Soldier, which I've always said is probably the most overrated MCU movie. Now, I want to clarify this. Overrated does not equal bad. I still think it is a damn great movie. Had some riveting action, notably on the highway fight scene. We got introduced to Sam Wilson, who is now Captain America today, and it was the Russo brothers' directorial debut within the MCU. So this was a groundbreaking movie at the time for the MCU. It made huge revelations in terms of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra. It was a spy thriller at its core, and it was a nice change of pace tonally speaking in the MCU. I just don't think it's the greatest MCU movie or comic book movie, which I've seen a lot of people claim it to be. That's why I take issue with that there. And of course, Captain America Civil War is the best film in this trilogy. It's more so like an Avengers 2.5, but it tackles conflicts so well. Give us the airport battle, Spider-Man, Black Panther, an awesome final showdown between Cap, Tony, and Bucky. It has to be my favorite in this trilogy, and it's a top 5 MCU movie. The Captain America trilogy gets better with each new entry, so I'm interested to see if Cap 4 can top the previous ones, because this won't be a trilogy much longer, but for now, it is my number 3. My runner-up for my favorite MCU trilogy is the Spider-Man trilogy. Spider-Man Homecoming captures the essence of this character so well with that coming-of-age high school feel. Spider-Man himself feels like a high schooler, which was a first at the time. Vulture is a top 5 MCU villain. I will die on that hill. Michael Keaton portrays him so well. He's a family man who will do whatever it takes to protect his family. And the scene where Peter opens the door and realizes Vulture is Liz's dad, jaw on the floor, legit one of the most shocked moments I've ever been in a theater, and the whole car scene that would follow, even better. It's got some web swinging Spidey action. Iron Man has a little role here, so of course I'm a sucker for that. I can't help but love seeing Spider-Man in the MCU. It was like a dream come true. Then we got Far From Home, which is one of the more overhated MCU movies. Again, such a fun summer movie. You got Mysterio as the villain here, doing his over-the-top thing, Jake Gyllenhaal having a blast. We're outside of the USA here. There's that whole drone third act final battle. The big issue here is some of the stupidity in this movie, like the character Brad. I just want to flick him like a bug right off the screen because he's so irritating. And a lot of the like scenarios that Spidey ends up in are pretty goofy. Plus there is some pretty throwaway humor here, but overall Far From Home gets way too much hate. And then of course, Spider-Man No Way Home caps off this trilogy wonderfully, giving us all 3 Spider-Man swinging together in the final act, but also serving a greater purpose in Tom Holland's Peter Parker's role in the film. They really sort of open his eyes to hope and relate to him because they both lost people they loved in their respective universes, and they really kind of bond over that. We also got Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin giving a damn great performance as the main villain here, but also seeing all the Spidey villains back in action was just so special, and in fact, that would be the word I use to describe No Way Home. Special. I'll always cherish it, even though I do think it drags a little more each time I rewatch it. The moment Tobey and Andrew show up onward is perfection. And then there was only one. My favorite MCU trilogy is the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. And damn does it feel good to say that because Volume 3 just hit theaters and I can finally call this a trilogy. But starting with the first Guardians movie, this is a top 10 MCU movie and probably always will be. In fact, it's the movie that I feel like most people have seen from the MCU. Like most people who don't even follow the MCU have probably seen Guardians of the Galaxy because it stands alone as a great movie outside of this bigger cinematic universe. And the main reason for that is because of the characters. Everyone has a different character they're going to relate or connect to, and they all come together to make this family that just shouldn't work on paper but ends up being so lovable. You've got the space adventure, the action, the hilarious jokes, and the rockin' soundtrack, all of the elements that make this movie great. The only issue with Guardians, and it's very minor to me, is Ronan as the main villain. He's pretty much just Thanos' puppet, so it doesn't really bother me that much. But all that's to say, Guardians 1 is probably on the Mount Rushmore of MCU movies in terms of how influential they were. Then we roll into Guardians Volume 2, which I have a very interesting relationship, because when I first saw the movie in theaters opening day, I really enjoyed it. Then I watched it again before Infinity War, and then didn't watch it again until this past week. So during that 5-year gap where I didn't rewatch the movie, I somehow convinced myself I didn't like it by reading negative reviews and seeing it was sort of a trendy thing to hate on the movie, and that happens every now and then. So I just rewatched the movie and I had a whole new appreciation for it, almost re-sparking my love for the film that I once had. I really like Guardians 2. It's got a better villain and ego than the first film with Ronan. The soundtrack is arguably better. It might be a funnier movie, and the action and just overall stakes are both increased in this movie. But the main issue with Guardians 2 is that it still does have that all over the place opening that just goes from planetary setting to planetary interplanetary setting, it can be a little distracting, but once it finds its footing in the middle act, this movie is a blast. And it might just have the saddest death in the MCU. The end is so emotional every single time. Plus we got 5 post-credit scenes. Wild stuff. But then of course we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to cap off this trilogy. The movie just hit theaters and it is incredible. I don't say that lightly. It is genuinely one of my favorite MCU movies. It's the perfect culmination of everything James Gunn has set up in the first 2 films, giving us everything we love about the Guardians turned up to 1,000. The action is the best it's been in this franchise. There's one scene in particular that blew my mind. The humor is at its best here because we understand these characters and their chemistry so well. The jokes are smarter and it really had me laughing out loud. And it's so emotional. Whether that's through Rocket's backstory or just the current situation the Guardians are in the film, it's a high stakes, high stress situation, so the stress was at an all-time high, but also through the flashbacks and getting to know Rocket's backstory even more, I cried multiple times. There were just those moments where I felt overwhelmed with emotion. I had to wipe tears from my cheeks a lot during this movie, but James Gunn blends all this together so well in this 2.5-hour epic conclusion, and the result is a beautiful send-off to this group of Guardians. They're a family that we came to know and love over the past damn near decade. As the credits rolled, I was overwhelmed with happiness. It was a very bittersweet feeling, but this movie just really knew how to insert music at the right times. Like in the final 10 minutes, I was just smiling and tearing up simultaneously. This is a gorgeous movie that is special. I can't wait to rewatch it for years to come. In fact, Guardians 3 brings together everything from the first 2 Guardians in this movie, making it the most cohesive and connected trilogy in the MCU, and by far the best in my mind. But that's just my ranking of all the MCU trilogies. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite is and your ranking. Hit that like button and of course subscribe and hit that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 75,000 subscribers here on the channel. I'm very close, it would mean a lot. Stay tuned for some more MCU videos coming soon, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.